Hello everyone, my name is Manas Shende. This is our DBMS assignment 3. So in this assignment we are going to look at the data modeling. So let's start. So, data modeling, a data model is a collection of conceptual tools for describing data relationship, data semantics, and consistency constraint. In simple terms, data models define how the logical structure of database is modeled. That is, data models define how data is connected to each other and how they are processed and stored inside the system. Data models are fundamental entities to introduce abstraction in a database management system. Categories of data models. High level or conceptual data models provide concepts that are close to the way many users perceive data, whereas low level or physical data model provide concepts that describe the details of how data is stored in the computer. So in entity relationship model, it is also called ER model, is based on the notation of real world entity and relationship among them. While formulating real world scenarios into the database model, the ER model creates entity set, relationship set, general attributes and constraint. ER model is best used for the conceptual design of a database. ER model is based on entity and their attributes. Relationship among entities in ER modeling. A database structure is portrayed as a diagram called as entity relationship diagram. So why we use the ER diagrams? So it helps us to define terms related to entity relationship modeling, provide a preview of how all your tables should connect, what fields are going to be on each table, helps to describe entity attributes relationship. ER diagram are translatable into relationship table which allows you to build database quickly. ER diagrams can be used by database designer as a blueprint for implementing data in specific software application. The database designer gains a better understanding of the information to be contained in the database. With the help of ERP diagram, the it allows you to communicate with logical structure of the database to user. So here the flowchart of ER models. So in ER models, we are going to study about entity, attributes, and relation. In entity, there is weak entity. In attributes, there are key attributes, component attributes, multivalued attributes, derived attributes. In relation, there are four relation. First one is one to one relation, second is one to many relation, third one is many to one relation, and fourth one is many to many relation. So we can draw the ER diagram by particular symbol, and each symbol has its particular meaning. Like in rectangle, if we draw rectangle, this shows that the entity type or strong entity. Whereas the double rectangle we draw, it is for the weak entity. When we draw ellipse, symbol represent attributes. It is represented for attributes. When we draw double ellipse, it's for multi-valued attributes. When we draw a dash ellipse, it is for derived attributes. And when we draw diamond, it represents relationship type. And lines are drawn for the link attributes to entity types and entity type with other relationship type. Also, we have primary key. Attributes are underlined. For primary key, attributes are underlined. Means we will underline the attributes, means it will be considered as primary key. So, ER models are created based on three basic concepts, that is entity, attributes, and relationship. So, here is the example of the entity. So, entity can be place, person, object, event, or concept about which data is to be maintained. Example, car, student. So, in attributes, it can be property or characteristic of an entity. Example, color of car entity, name of student entity. In association between the instance of one or more entity types. For example, blue car balance belongs to student Jack. So an entity is an ER model is a real world object. It is a real world object. An entity is a thing or object in the real world that is distinguishable from all other objects. For example, each person in an enterprise is an entity. Each entity has attributes. The particular properties that describe it or attributes are descriptive properties possessed by each member of an entity set. For example, an employee entity may be described by the employee name, age, address, salary, and job. So, weak entity, an entity that depends on another entity, is called a weak entity. It is represented by double rectangle as we studied earlier. So, the weak entity does not contain any key attributes of its own. The weak entity is represented by a double rectangle. So weak entity example, building has apartment. So apartment is a weak entity and building is a strong entity. So here we will see the difference between strong entity set and weak entity set. So in strong entity set, a single rectangle is used to represent of a strong entity set as described earlier. And with for weak entity we represented by double rectangle. In strong entity set, it contains sufficient attributes to form its primary key, whereas in weak entity set, it does not contain sufficient attributes to form its primary key. In strong entity set, a diamond symbol used for the representation of relationship that exists between the two strong entities. Whereas in weak entity set, a double diamond symbol is used to represent of the identifying relationship that exists between the strong and weak entity set. A single line is used for the representation of the connection between the strong entity and the relationship, whereas in weak entity set, a double line is used for the relationship of the connection between the weak entity set and the relationship set. In strong entity set, total participation may or may not exist in the relationship, while in weak entity set, total participation always exists in the identifying relationship. Means in summary, if the entity is strong, then it is by single line only, and if the we have to show the entity is weak, then we can show represent it by the double line. Total and partial participation. In total participation, not all entities are involved in the relationship. Partial participation is represented by single lines. In the following example, entities with double line with a relation, it shows the total participation, and with entities with the single line, it shows the partial participation. So example, students enroll in course. So double line shows the total participation of the student, and with the course it shows the partial participation as we have seen in the earlier slide. Employees works for department. So employees shows the total participation and also department shows the total participation. Employees manages department. So employee shows the partial participation and the department shows the total participation. Entity set, an entity set is a set of entity of the same type that shares the same properties or attributes. The set of all person who are customer at a given bank, for example, can be defined as the entity set customer. The individual entity that constitute a set are said to be extension of the entity set. Thus, all the individual bank customer are the extension of the entity set customer. Now we will see the attributes. The attributes is used to describe the property of an entity. For example, ID, age, contact number, name, etc. can be attributes of a student. There are key attributes. The key attributes is used to represent the main characteristic of an entity. In simple attribute, it cannot be divided further. For example, the student department name is it is also called as atomic value. The next is composite attribute. It is possible to break down composite attribute. For example, a student full name may be further divided into first name, second name, and last name. In derived attribute, this type of attribute does not include in the physical database. However, these their values are derived from other attributes present in the database. For example, age should not be stored directly. Instead, it should be derived from the date of birth of the employee. We have multi-valued attributes can have more than one values. For example, a student can have more than one mobile number, email address, etc. So this diagram shows the all the example. So types of keys we will see in the next assignment. So till then keep learning. Thank you.